what I call.
Okay, good morning. So, if you remember, we had a problem left from the last session. We didn't solve it. So I want to start with solving this. And then probably this would be the last session that I will spend on quadratic equations. I will give you a little bit of more problems with more variety. That's also something that you need to know. And then I will leave you on your own to work a little bit on yourself. Okay, so how can I solve this problem? Of course, one way is to think about the problem is to raise it to power 2 using the squaring rule. But probably that's not a very good idea, yes? Because if you do that, you will get a 4th degree equation here. And usually I told you that 4th degree equations are not easy to solve. But do you remember what was the last idea I talked about in the previous session was introducing an auxiliary variable. If something is happening in an equation, so you can just introduce a new variable. So I hope that you can immediately see that x squared minus 1 appears here and there. So it might motivate you to introduce a new variable here, yes? So you say that, for example, I don't know, in this case, if you want, let me call it capital X. Let capital X be x squared minus 1. Okay? Then, what happens to my equation? This equation can be rewritten in terms of capital X rather than little x. Yes? But what is the benefit immediately becomes clear. Instead of x squared minus 1, I plug capital X. This becomes capital X squared. And minus 3, this becomes capital X, and then this becomes plus 2, equals to 0. But then hopefully you immediately realize this is a very, very simple problem to solve, yes, because that's just the standard quadratic equation. And usually when this coefficient is 1, I prefer to look if I can factorize it. That becomes faster. This is not a necessity at all. If you don't like factorization, you can put PQ formula or ABC formula handy and then use it to solve the problem. Yes? But let me just try to use factorization here because it is extremely simple to guess. So you put 2 pairs of brackets, capital X here, capital X there. You ask yourself, I need to find 2 numbers so that the sum is minus 3 and the product is 2. And I think it's extremely simple. Yes? What are those? What are those numbers? 2 numbers whose sum is minus 3, the product is 2. Always start with the product. The 2 can be written as 1 times 2.
2, 1.
Minus 2.
Minus 1, minus 2, yes? If I add them, it becomes negative 3. If I multiply them, it becomes positive 2. And I equate it to 0. I get x equals to 1, capital X. Either this one is 0, so this gives me x is equal to 1, or this is equal to 0, it gives me x equals to 2. Yes? But the problem is not finished here because I was looking for the original little x, not the capital X. But then it becomes very simple. I would say that, okay, if x is 1, then what happens? Instead of capital X, I put x squared minus 1. So this becomes x squared minus 1 is equal to 1. Of course, this is a quadratic equation, but this is one of those equations for which b is 0. So instead of using PQ formula or whatever, it is easier to move this to the other side. So this becomes x squared is 2. And you are looking for x, so x becomes the square root of 2, but remember, plus or minus. So these are 2 solutions that I get. And then I have another one. So I would say that if x is capital, if capital X is 2, then x squared minus 1 is 2. I move it to the other side, x squared becomes 3. And again, little x becomes plus or minus a square root of 3. So how many answers are there for this equation? 4. Positive square root of 2, negative square root of 2, positive square root of 3, and negative square root of 3. Yes? Okay, so I think that you can practice on this type of questions yourself. There are some of them in the book, but there are some different types of questions that you might face in the topic of quadratic equations. Let me just try to give you some of those. I would say that it would be better if I just write the question, I don't tell you anything, and then let's see how you work with the problem. So let me start with a simple one. So I would say that consider the equation so m plus 2 x squared minus 2mx, let me see, plus 1 equals to 0. Determine m. These type of questions are high level questions. Determine m so that this equation has a double root. Okay, so what is the meaning of this question? If I ask you what you see here, of course you say that's an equation. And then this equation, when by default, if I don't mention something, if you have more than one variable or letter in the problem, if I don't say anything, I mean x is your unknown. Yes? The other variable is called a parameter. Yes? So I have two letters involved in this problem, but x is my variable because it hasn't mentioned anything in this problem. But they have asked you to determine the parameter m so that it guarantees that if I replace m with that value that you're supposed to find, this equation has a double root. Yes, is that clear? So, for example, if I choose randomly m equals to 5, for example, and put it in that equation, it becomes 7x squared minus 10x plus 1. Yes? If you start solving this equation, you will realize that there are two answers. Okay? But I want to have a double root. To have a double root, it means I have to have two answers the same. Yes? So m equals to 5 is not one of them. Yes? Yeah, be silent, please. Hello. So m equals to 5 is not one of them. But I don't know, you can change m to any other number. So the point is that by changing m to a number, you generate a quadratic equation. For this quadratic equation, in principle, you have three scenarios. Either two roots, one root, or neither. Yes? So I want to fine-tune this parameter, not randomly, by some systematic way, so that if I replace m with that particular value and I generate a quadratic equation, that quadratic equation happens to have one double root. Is that clear or not? Or it might be I'm just trying to explain a lot. Is the problem clear? Yes? For any value of m, you generate a quadratic equation. If I change m, you change your quadratic equation. My goal is to choose m in a way that when I generate that particular quadratic equation, that particular quadratic equation should have one double root. Yes? Okay, so let me ask you, how do you think I can solve this problem? Because I cannot start doing trial and error. Yes, there are infinitely many possibilities for m. I cannot choose one of them and try to solve the equation to see if it works or not. Yes?
By double root, you mean that delta should be equal to 0?
0, exactly.
Okay, then we use the formula for delta equals to 0. X equals to minus b over 2a.
So with just delta is enough. Why do you say x?
Yeah.
Because I didn't ask you to find the double root.
Yeah.
I asked you to do something that this has a double root. So that's completely correct. So this means that you need to know that a quadratic equation has a double root if the delta is 0. So that's the only thing that you need to learn, to remember. In order for this equation to have a double root, I have to force the delta of this equation to be 0. Yes, that's the condition. But what was the formula for delta? Do you remember? It was b squared minus 4ac should be equal to 0. But the important thing is that, let me ask your understanding. If I ask you what is playing the role of a in this problem, what is your answer? What is a in this problem?
M plus 2.
M plus 2. A is always the coefficient of the quadratic term. So a is m plus 2. And what is b? Can you tell me?
2m.
What?
2m.
Minus 2m.
Minus.
It doesn't matter here because it will be squared, but it is better to know it's minus 2m. And what is c? 1. Yes? So I put them in this equation. So minus 2m squared minus 4 times a, but you have to be careful. Here now you're doing algebra, so you have to put them in pairs of brackets, and then multiplied by c, which is 1. This is supposed to be 0. But then minus 2m squared is nothing except 4m squared. And then I multiply minus 4, so 1 is nothing. I multiply by 1. I multiply by 4, it becomes minus 4m minus 8 equals to 0. So I want you to understand the logic. So it means that if I want to find this m satisfies this new equation. I have to solve this new equation. But this equation in its own right is a second degree equation. So I have to use delta again. But so don't confuse with these deltas. This delta is the condition that I put for having a double root. But coincidentally, I got an equation which is also a quadratic equation, and I have to solve it. Yes? But then I have another delta involved here. But I myself prefer when the coefficients are all divisible by a number, I always divide because the numbers become smaller. So it is not a have to, but I would prefer to do it. I divide everything by 4. It becomes m squared minus m minus 2 equals to 0. And I have to solve this equation. Now in this equation, if I ask you what is your unknown in this equation, what is the answer? X is the unknown, m is just a parameter. But in this new equation, what is the unknown? M is the unknown. These are the things that you need to understand. Okay, so here m is actually playing the role of the unknown. Okay, so I have to solve this again. And then I don't know, I still prefer to factorize it, but let me just do it using delta again. Because I want you to appreciate the differences between these deltas and why I'm using 2 deltas. Okay, so when you reach here, you can completely forget about what you have done so far, because now your energy should be focused on solving this one. Okay, now if I ask you what is A in this problem, what is your answer? What is B in this problem? What is C in this problem?
1 minus 1.
Yes, A is the coefficient of the quadratic term, which is 1. B is minus 1. C is minus 2. Yes? And I have to write delta again because I want to see if it is positive or negative. So I write b squared minus 4ac formula again, but b squared is nothing except 1 minus 4 times a times c. So this becomes 8. So it becomes 1 plus 8, it becomes 9, and 9 is positive. Okay, don't get confused. Yes, because this 9 is positive, I am looking for the roots here. The only thing that you have to be careful, don't write x, because your unknown is m. So I write the formula for m. It becomes minus b plus or minus the square root of delta divided by 2a. But not these a's and c's and b's, only these numbers here. So minus b becomes positive 1. plus or minus a square root of delta. Delta is 9. Square root of delta becomes 3. Divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 1, which is 2. So then I get two answers. 1 plus 3, 4. Divided by 2, 2. So one answer is m equals to 2. Or the other answer is what? 1 minus 3 minus 2 divided by 2 minus 1. Okay? So these are the numbers that I am looking for. Yes? But let me try to understand. I have done things right. Can you tell me if I want to check that my answers are correct or wrong, what I have to do? Because if you tell me what to do, it means that you have a good understanding of what the problem is. How can I check, for example, if this m equals to 2 is a correct answer to this problem? Yes?
I guess you could plug m into...
Yes, you plug m here, you generate a new equation. Let us do it in our head. M is 2, I put it here, it becomes 4x squared. I put m here, it becomes minus 4x, and then plus 1. If I ask you how many solutions do you expect for this equation, if you have done everything right here, you would say definitely one root. That's the double root. So if you don't believe, we can calculate. Okay? So how can I calculate? By the way, do I need to calculate? No, because that's a squaring pattern. It's 2x minus 1 squared. Yes? The first one squared, 2 times the first one times the second one squared. So this means that 2x minus 1 is 0, so x is equal to 1/2. How many roots did I get? Only 1. So this means that yes, m equals to 2 is a correct answer to this problem, because when I replace m with that value and I solve the equation, I realize that there is only one root. And then you can also check minus 1. If I check minus 1, I put minus 1 here. It becomes what? X squared, because minus 1 plus 2 is 1. I put minus 1 here, it becomes 2x, and I have plus 1. And I hope that you immediately recognize the pattern again. It's a squaring pattern, and then the only answer is minus 1. Yes? But this minus 1 is just a coincidence that this is equal to that minus 1. They have nothing to do in principle with each other. Is that clear, this question? But that's one type of questions that you need to learn, okay? I want to give you one more to practice a little bit, and I want to wait for you. I will give you more or less the same question, but with different numbers, okay? The same question, so I don't write the question again, but I actually write the equation. The equation is 5m minus 1 x squared, and then it is minus 5m plus 2x. It's a little bit more involved algebraically, but I think you can manage that. 3m minus 2 equals to 0. So exactly the same question, but change the equation to this a little bit more involved equation. I want to give you 5 minutes to think and find the answers, okay? Everything you need is on the board, but you have to be careful in your algebra. Okay, could you solve the problem and find m? Do you have any answer for m, or you still need more time? Okay, you need to say something. More time, or I should start solving it?
More time.
Okay, I give you a little bit more. Okay, any answers?
I haven't simplified, but I got them.
So what's the answer? The answer should be a number, yes? What's the number?
Is the expression minus 72 plus or minus 68 over minus 7?
Oh, the numbers are so complicated. Okay, let me see how it works. So, I want to fine-tune this m. So usually, so let me double check that if I haven't written something wrong. No? Okay, so usually, so if you want to solve this problem, it means that you need to force the delta of this equation to be 0. That's the meaning, okay? So then you need to understand what is m, what is playing the role of, what's playing the role of a in this problem? This coefficient. So 5m minus 1. What is playing the role of b? Minus 5m plus 2. What is playing the role of c? Can you tell me what is c in this problem?
3m minus 2.
The whole expression, yes, 3m minus 2. So what I have to do, I have to put delta equal to 0. Which delta? Delta of this original equation. This means that b squared minus 4ac should be 0. This means that b squared, I don't need to be worried about the negative sign because it will be cancelled by this even power. And I will get 5m plus 2 squared. Yes? And then I have minus 4. I have multiplied by a, the whole package. Multiplied by c, the whole package. This is supposed to be 0. Now you can forget about everything and concentrate on solving this equation. For solving this equation, you have this and you have this product. You have to be careful about negative signs and things. So it really highly depends on your skills in algebra. So whatever you have done in the previous lessons, it will count here actually. So this one is a squaring rule. It becomes the first one squared, 25m squared. 2 times the first one times the second one. 10m times 2, it's 20m. This one squared is positive 4. So here, if you don't mind, I multiply these two and then multiply it by minus 4. So this 4 is here, be careful. This 4 is coming from here. I have another minus 4 here, but don't get confused. I'm not allowed to simplify them because that's a product. I have to do the multiplication first. So I open a pair of brackets and I start multiplying them here. So this becomes 15m squared. 5m times minus 2 is minus 10m. Minus 1 times 3m is minus 3m. And minus 1 times minus 2 is positive 2. Equal to 0. So you have to do these things, algebra calculations patiently once. I think it's better. So here I cannot simplify anything. So I have to copy and paste everything so far. But then I multiply minus 4 in. But before multiplication in, I know that these two are similar. I can combine them and write minus 13m. And then I multiply minus 4 in. Minus 4 times 15 is minus 60m squared. Minus 4 times minus 13 is what? Positive 52m. And then I have minus 4 times 2 is minus 8 equals to 0. I have to continue simplification. 25m squared minus 60, it becomes how much? Minus 35m squared. I have 20m and 52, 72m. And then I have 4 minus 8, which is minus 4 equals to 0. So you are right, the problem is actually not very friendly. And that is good, by the way, because usually I could find another way to solve it, but this is the power of ABC or PQ formula, because it's a systematic way to solve the problem, regardless of if the numbers are big or not. Okay, so it means that you can forget about everything up to here and just concentrate on solving this problem. So how can I do that? I have to understand another A, B, and C in this problem, but here the unknown is M. So A is minus 35. By the way, Ali, did you get the same equation?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so I just want to make sure that I have no mistakes by checking it. So B is 72 and C is negative 4. Okay, so I calculate delta again. which is b squared minus 4ac. But for this new problem, I hope that you can help me with your calculators. So 72 to power 2, then I will have minus 4 times minus 35 times minus 4. So 72 times 72 is how much?
5,184.
5,184.
5,184.
And then one negative sign, one negative sign, one negative sign. It is 3 negative signs, so it remains negative. Yes? And then 4 times 35 is 140 times that is 560, yes? 5 times 35 is 140 times that, that's correct, yes? And then if you subtract these two, this becomes 4, this becomes 2, this becomes 6 and 4. Am I right?
Yes.
And this is definitely positive. So I have 2 roots. But what should I write for the formula? Don't get confused. Don't write x equals 2. Because this is an equation in m. So you have to write m equals to minus b plus or minus square root of delta divided by 2a. And I hope that you are not confused. Not these a, b, and c's, the new a, b, and c's for this problem. So minus b is minus 72 plus or minus a square root of that number. I don't know if that number is friendly or not.
Yeah, it's 68.
Okay, good. So 2 times a, 2 times this number is minus 70. So you said it is 68, yes?
Yes.
And this is really good to see this problem with these bad numbers. It was not, I don't think we could guess something here to factorize this so simply. But now we can find, actually, if we have the calculator in front of us, this is a systematic way that we can find the answers. So now we have 2 answers, as always here in this case. So I have minus 72. Let me take the positive sign first. Minus 72, positive 68 becomes negative 4 divided by negative 17. And I always simplify. This is always important. So it becomes 2 over 35. That is one of those answers. I hope that you agree with me. It is not possible to guess that if I change m with that particular number, it turns into a quadratic equation with one double root. Okay, another scenario is m is equal to what? Minus 72, minus 68, minus 140, yes? Divided by minus 70, so it becomes 2. This means that m is equal to 2. Yes? So there are 2 answers for m. If I replace m with 2 or with that 2 over 35, I generate a quadratic equation in x. If I solve that generated quadratic equation, that one will give me only one single solution. So is that clear now? So, yes?
So the point is to get only one solution for x.
The point is to fine-tune m so that if m is replaced by that value, it gives you a quadratic equation, and if you solve that, it gives you one double root or one single answer. Yes? Okay, any questions here? I want to give you a similar question without any help, and I want to see how do you solve that problem. It's very similar, but of course a little bit different. So let me find that problem for you. Yes, this problem. So let me, where are you? The question is this. Consider the following equation. Let me just write. Consider this equation. Let me write. the following equation. Yes, the equation is this. M minus 1x squared minus 2mx, and then you have plus m plus 3 equals to 0. For what values, value or values of m, this equation for what value of m does this equation have two distinct roots? It's a similar question, but a little bit different. Okay, I want you to yourself to think about. I am completely sure that if you think logically, you can solve the problem yourself. Okay, but in this problem, I want you to fine-tune m so that you get one single root out of it. But here I want you to find what value or what values of m give rise to an equation with two distinct roots. Just a slight adjustment is needed. It's not a hard problem. Yes? I will consider this kind of problems A-level problems, but now that you have seen the solution of this problem, I don't consider this is a really hard problem. I give you 5 minutes again to think about this problem. Okay, so can you describe, Ali, so what is your logic to solve the problem here? So let me clean the board here. So yeah, we can explain.
So we do the same thing as the previous question, but for m we don't write the equation equals to 0, and instead we write greater than 0.
Exactly. So the delta of this equation can have three possibilities. Yes, less than 0 gives rise no solutions for this. 0 gives you one double root, but you want to have two distinct roots. So you have to force the delta of this to be greater than 0. Yes? Because as soon as the delta of an equation, of a quadratic equation, is greater than 0, then this is guaranteed that you have two distinct roots. Yes? So that's more or less the same problem, but then the only difference is that instead of putting delta of this equation 0, you put delta of this equation greater than 0. Yes, that's the only thing. Thank you very much. So now the details are more or less the same thing. So you need to write A here in this problem is m minus 1, B in this problem is minus 2m, and C in this problem is m plus 3. This time you have to put delta strictly greater than 0. In the previous problem, I put delta equal to 0. You see that problem there? I put the delta equal to 0 here, but now I want to have two distinct roots, so delta should be greater than 0. And then what happens? B squared minus 4ac should be larger than 0. B squared is, so let me just write them patiently, minus 2m squared minus 4 times a times c. Yes?
Yes.
That should be greater than 0. No, sorry for that. That is greater than 0, okay? But then I raise it to power 2. It becomes 4m squared. Here I have 3 numbers multiplied, so let me keep minus 4 for the time being and multiply the others. M here times that m is m squared. M times 3 is 3m. The other one becomes negative m, and the last one becomes negative 3. This is supposed to be larger than 0. So this becomes 4m squared these two are similar, they can be combined to 2m. I multiply minus 4 in, it becomes minus 4m squared minus 8m positive 12 greater than 0. And then this one and that one are totally cancelled, and I get minus 8m plus 12 greater than 0. Do you know what is the name of this that you see on the board? It is not an equation, it is an inequality. Yes? And we learned that in Math 1C how to solve that. You have to make m alone, but there is one thing that you have to be careful about. Do you remember what was that? I move minus 12 to the other side. I move 12 to the other side, it becomes negative 12. But I want to make m alone, I have to divide by negative 8. But when I divide by a negative number, do you remember you have to flip the sign, yes? So what happens? M becomes less than minus 12 over minus 8. I flip the sign. And I simplify this always. Negative and negative signs are gone. I can simplify everything by 4. So it becomes 6 divided by, I divide by 4. It is 3 divided by 2. So I think, was this your answer?
Yes.
Okay. So let us interpret this. What is the meaning? It means that if you choose m less than 1.5, any number that you like, and put that number that you choose here, it will generate a quadratic equation for you. It is guaranteed that that quadratic equation has 2 distinct roots. That's the meaning. So, for what value or values of m we have? So the answer is that for all real values for m that are less than 1.5. Is that understandable? So these are higher level questions, okay? Okay. And I want you to see, I don't know if you can solve these questions, but I think you can, okay? So I want to ask you to solve this equation, but you need to have a little bit of algebraic skills. I cannot predict right now that you have, I think you can. So the question is this, B minus C, and I am intentionally using these letters so that you learn not to get confused. C minus A, I don't know if we can solve it or not, but let us try. So this is x squared here, this is this one, and then we have A minus B. So this is a quadratic equation. You see there are 3 letters or 4 letters involved. A, B, C on the one hand, x on the other hand. But I want you to make x the subject. So it means that you can think about A, B, and C are given to you, and you are supposed to find x in terms of A, B, and C. You remember we had this in Math 1C as well. For example, I could ask you to solve this equation. Making x the subject. Then you have to make x alone, so you move it to the other side, and then you divide by m. But in this case, I don't want to make it alone, because in quadratic equation, I shouldn't make it alone. I have to use the formula to solve it, yes? So here, I want to see that how do you think about this problem. So in this problem, this is playing the role of A, but not that A. I intentionally wrote the same letters, so that you learn not to get confused. This is the coefficient of x squared, this is the coefficient of x, and this is your constant term, yes? Could you understand what I said? So you are supposed to solve x in terms of A, B, and C. And I use these words a lot in mathematics, so please try to do. I'm not completely sure, because might be you need some tricks to factorize something at the end, but let us see how it goes. I think you can do that. Find x and x in terms of A and B. And C, of course. So I will try to tell you, but this is something you need to know more about factorization, so probably you will not be able to solve that. But at least you can solve it, but you cannot simplify it that much unless you know more tricks for factorization. But you can tell me how to start the problem. So if I want to start this problem, I have one formula. Okay, it is minus b plus or minus square root of delta divided by 2a. I put this in a box because I don't want you to get confused between this a and b here and the a and b in the problem. Yes? These a and b's are the a and b's for the standard equation. Standard equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Yes? But you need to understand what is going on. So I can use the formula. Okay, now you help me to write it down. Yes? So what happens? It becomes minus b. This is your b. So minus b will cancel this minus sign, and you are left with c minus a. Yes? And then you have plus or minus, and then you have a square root sign. Delta is your b squared. B squared will get rid of this minus sign. You get c minus a squared. And then minus 4 times a, but this is playing the role of your a, b minus c, multiplied by c. The whole expression here will play the role of your c, and divided by 2 times a, so this becomes 2 times b minus c. Yes? So this problem is a fun problem. The reason is that even though this seems complicated, but you can simplify this a lot. But simplification of this needs a little bit more identities that you haven't studied so far. So for the time being, if you are interested, you continue yourself. That's a challenging problem for you. But if not, you can stop here. Okay? I don't want to continue with simplification of that. Yes, but I want you to do it if you are interested. Otherwise, you can just leave it like. But let me just make myself clear by giving a problem that you can solve at this level. And let me give you this problem.
Vänta, det där är ju...
Yeah, I really want you to think about the people who are interested in competition problems. They should be able to solve that problem. Okay, but let me write this equation for you: mx squared minus m squared plus n. M squared plus n. And then plus mn equals to 0. The same question, of course, here my parameters are m and n. I want to actually find a solution for x. And in this case, I am sure that you can simplify it. It's not that hard. This is an A-level question, but it is manageable for you. Okay, I want to wait a little bit for you so that you can solve that. Are you on track on this one? That is not that hard, I think, if I haven't misjudged that. Okay, I want to wait for you because I want you to learn these things. Even the people who want to solve this, I recommend you to solve this simpler one first to get the idea of what do I mean by simplification here. So you will see what will happen in this case that you can immediately realize how to simplify. That is harder to detect here. But the same idea will happen. Yes?
Does it become 1? Or,
The whole expression.
yeah, I think so.
I haven't calculated the whole expression. Okay,
Okay.
what is your opinion? What is your opinion about this one?
What?
What is your opinion? Did you do something with this
Yeah,
square root
yeah, I
sign?
did, yeah.
Okay.
So that's what's it called? Cubic.
This one.
Yeah, this one.
So what is your answer for this one? Can you tell me?
For that one? It's a minus 2b plus c squared. Yeah.
That's correct.
Oh, hold. Actually, I made them. Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you. Okay. What about this one? This is actually, I wouldn't say this is hard for your math knowledge. I consider this an A-level question, but it is manageable. But this is beyond actually the scope of this lesson, even though the idea is exactly the same. Yes? Okay. I want to wait still for you to see that if you can manage to solve this problem.
Right,
If delta becomes negative, then this
If delta becomes negative, it means that there are no roots.
no
the minus right?
Yeah. There are no solutions. But I don't think that delta for this one, you mean?
yes.
I don't think it becomes negative.
Or maybe I have
I think that's reasonable. To be honest. I think that's reasonable.
we must simplify delta.
Okay, och följdmotion.
Okay, so might be you need a little bit of experience. What do I mean by solving this? Let me just do it again. Here, I hope that you agree with me. Here, no matter of confusion of letters, this is playing the role of your A, this is playing the role of your B, and this is playing the role of your C. Yes? So if you want to solve a quadratic equation, if the question is hard and we cannot guess, we have to use delta method. So I will calculate delta first. Okay, so delta becomes b squared. When I square b, I get rid of this negative sign. So this becomes m squared plus n to the power of 2. And then I have minus 4 times a, which is m, times c, which is mn. Yes? Of course, in the case that these are numbers, I can simplify this and get a number. But here I cannot expect to get a number because I have to work with letters. So what I get is an expression rather than a number. Yes? So, but you can leave it like this, but you can simplify it algebraically probably a lot. So here, what do you think? I can raise it to power 2, for example, by squaring rule. The first one squared is m to the 4th. 2 times the first one times the second one. And then the second one squared. Minus, this becomes 4. M times n is m squared n. Yes? But of course I will not stop here. I will continue. How? The next step is very clear. What's the next step? Yes? These two, and they are similar. So it becomes what? It becomes m to the 4 plus, minus, 2m squared n plus n squared. Yes? If you leave it like this, that is not wrong, but that's not beautiful because, so let me just tell you why. Because if you want to write x, you write x is minus b plus or minus a square root of delta divided by 2a. Okay, what is minus b? This is b, minus b becomes positive m squared plus n, good, plus or minus a square root of this expression. Yes? This looks ugly again. It's not wrong if you write this. Of course, you get some points for it. 2 times a, which is 2m. You can leave it like this. That is not wrong. but you can do much better. That's what I'm saying, what to do to make it much better. If I realize I can continue here something which is relevant to this problem. Can you see any kind of pattern here?
Yeah.
Yes? That's a squaring pattern. Yes? So even though the whole expression was not a complete square, but algebra was designed in a way that when you simplify, you get a quadratic expression. Sorry, you get a squaring pattern. Yes? So what can I write here?
M minus n.
No, m squared minus n again squared. Yes? Because let us check. The first one squared, 2 times the first one times the second one, then the second one squared. So why this is better? Because instead of this one, if I don't write this, if I write this version of delta, I hope that immediately you agree I can continue. If I just didn't do that, I couldn't continue. I was stuck with that ugly expression. But now, I see that I can still continue. How? Because this square root will help us to get rid of this power of 2. Okay? So this becomes m squared plus n plus or minus. Instead of the whole expression here, I can write m squared minus n, but don't get confused. You have to put in the pair of brackets. And then divided by 2m. So you see it's a nice problem, yes? Because now I can still continue, but you should be careful about not making mistakes in your calculations. So what I do, I split it into 2 parts from here. One I will take with positive sign as usual. So I have x equals to m squared plus n. Yes? And then I consider the plus sign, so I safely remove the pair of brackets here. It becomes plus m squared minus n totally divided by 2m. Can I continue this even further? Of course, yes. N and minus n are cancelled. M squared plus m squared is 2m squared divided by 2m. Can I go further? Yes. 2 and 2 are cancelled. M squared divided by x is m. So which one is better, do you think? This one is nicer, or leave it like that? So of course this is nicer. Yeah? So the one answer is m. Another one, don't get confused. Here, this minus sign is not only for the first one, but also for the second one. So this becomes m squared plus n minus m squared plus n divided by 2m. Here, this one and that one are cancelled. I get 2n divided by 2m. 2 and 2 are cancelled. I get n over m. So these are the simplified versions of my solution. So that's a nice problem, yes? So I was able to, so this is a combination, compound problem, yes? You need to know a lot of things. You need to know how to solve a quadratic equation. You also need to know how to factorize. You also need to know how to simplify algebraically. Is that clear?
Yes.
So that is also the same type of problem as Oscar actually mentioned, but it is harder because you don't know in a standard way if you haven't seen the videos that I have been talking about algebra. So if you can manage, the answer, what did you say, Oscar, will be?
It's a minus 2b plus c squared.
Minus 2b plus c squared.
Yes.
Did I get the same thing? Yes. So this is harder to see why if you simplify that, it becomes this expression. But the idea, if you understand that the rest of it is easy, because then this square root sign will actually kill that power of 2, and then it becomes much easier to calculate. Okay, I don't want to do it here right now because we don't have that identities being taught here in this lesson.
One of the answers was actually minus 1. So
one of the answers is minus 1. I can immediately check that. Yes, you are right. Yeah. Okay. So So -1, if you write it like this, it is not clear that this is really -1. But if you do that, of course, I have to assume that b is not equal to c, which is not. Otherwise, this doesn't work. Okay, so I would recommend you, I want to write one more of this type on the board, and I leave you alone. So if you want, you can work on that problem, or you can work on the announcements that I have already done on a school solve the other day. Okay, because I haven't started a new lesson. But I would say that quadratic equation, I will finalize it here. There are many things in quadratic equations that we can talk, and I will continue them in those Olympiad lessons in the future, hopefully. But right now, let me write a similar problem for you here. If you're interested, I would recommend you to solve it yourself. Okay, so let me clean this. If you are interested to solve another example for yourself, this is the problem. I think you can also do this m minus 2n times x squared, and then you have minus 2m x, and then you have m plus 2n. Yeah, this is easier than the previous one even. So if you are interested, solve this one and not just stop here. Of course, in principle, when I say solve, you can stop here. But I am asking solve and simplify as much as possible. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, I can stop teaching now. You don't have that much time to practice. I would recommend you, let us forget about giving you time. Let us solve this one, solve it for you, and we end the session. Okay, I give you 5 minutes, and then I will take 5 minutes to solve it myself. What are the answers?
X is equal to 1 and x is equal to m plus 2n divided by m minus 2n.
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct.
That's completely correct. Thank you. So let me solve the problem for you, because we don't have that much time left. So here I calculate delta. Delta is b squared, so this is playing the role of b. So b squared becomes 4m squared. Minus 4 times a, this is your a, and this is your c. Yes? So this becomes 4 times m minus 2n times m plus 2n. Yes? And then, of course, this is 4m squared. What is your suggestion here? Of course, I can multiply, but you can do better. Yes? What is that pattern? Yes? It's a conjugate pattern. So use these patterns so that you get used to it. So this becomes m squared minus the second one squared. And then you simplify that. So that's nothing, actually. This is already in the simplified version. It is not that fun, you know. So this becomes minus 4m squared plus 16n squared. And then, of course, this one and that one are cancelled, so you get 16n squared. You really don't need to do anything with this delta in this case. So then your answer is x equals to minus b. Minus b becomes positive 2m plus or minus the square root of your delta, which is this number, divided by 2 times your a. And then simplification is also needed here. You see 2m, the square root of 16n squared is 4n, divided by 2, m minus 2n. Then what you do, you can factor a 2 out. Yes, and then divided by 2m minus 2n. This 2 and that 2 are cancelled, and then I get two alternatives. One of them is with the positive sign, and it remains like that. You are not allowed to simplify this n with that n. They are not factors. You cannot simplify this n with that n. You cannot simplify this with that too. Just you have to leave it like that. And the other one is the negative sign. m minus 2n divided by m minus 2n. But of course, in this case, you can continue further because you have a fraction whose numerator and denominator match. Yes? It becomes 1. So one root is very beautiful, it's 1, and the other one is also good, but m plus 2n divided by m minus 2. Okay, any questions? So here, section 3.1 is finalized, section 3.2 is omitted by school bracket. That's complex numbers. It's a very, I think they did the good thing, because what is the purpose of starting a very one page of complex numbers for nothing? Yeah. We will study that in Math 4, of course, extensively. And then I will start a section 3.2 on Thursday. Section 3.3. And that is about quadratic functions. So it means that I want to explore the properties of this function, yes? You already knew the properties of this kind of function, kx plus m. So you know that, for example, if you draw the graph of such a function, it's a straight line. And then you want to understand a little bit about the behavior of a quadratic function. And in that case, quadratic equation becomes involved in the problem, yes? And that is the topic of the next lesson. Thank you very much.